Toastmaster Thedoric, to tip or not to tip? To tip or not to tip, Toastmaster Thedoric.
Imagine, if you will, you're in a cafe in Paris, just finishing up your cake. You set up your bill. As you were just getting up to leave, suddenly the waiter goes, he comes close to you and said, "Monsieur, is there anything else you need?" And then you said, "I'm fine, thank you." But you just stands there, waiting. And then it dawned on you, he wants a tip, and you forgot to give him a tip. So that's why he's waiting there. Then, awkwardly, you decide, the service wasn't even good. Why do I even need to tip? If I need to tip, how much do I need to tip? So you begin to fumble frantically in your wallet, trying to find some loose change. How much is enough? How much is over? And all the while, the waiter looks at you, stares at you impatiently. Isn't it just easier sometimes to just go, "Garçon"? An apple a day keeps the doctor away. You can bet that right now, somewhere in this world, a fellow traveler is facing the same dilemma. But what exactly is a tip? In principle, you tip someone to offer an incentive for good services. But here, the mentality is, you brought me your food, you filled my drink, you drove me to my destination, good job. Give yourself a pat on the back. But why should I pay you anything more? You're just doing your job, right? Wrong. Someone else in another country might beg to differ. A tip is you showing, you communicating to the service provider how good the service is. A tip can be both a reward or a criticism rolled into one. And plus, when you tip, more often than not is the case, the tip is valid because the person who received the tip needs it to survive. So, it's all quite confusing. In some countries, like the US, you tip in order to show that you acknowledge the service, in order to show you that you need to continue to maintain your status as a patron. But in other countries like Singapore and Malaysia, the tip is already fixed into your bill under the heading of gratuity. So if it's already in your bill, why tip? You can still tip, nevertheless it's appreciated, but it seems pointless because it's already in your bill. But if you contrast this to countries such as Italy, in Italy it's okay to tip, but if you tip when someone else's boss is around, you insult the boss. Because you're implying that the boss is not paying his workers enough. But if you tip in Japan, it's on the other extreme of this spectrum. If you tip in Japan, you insult the person directly. Because the best reward that you can give to the person for good services is just to recommend him for repeat business. So if you just tip him, not only do you fail to buy better services for yourself in the future, you will be scorned, you will be disrespected. So, in some countries, tipping is just manners. But in other countries, tipping is just not the norm. Here in Brunei, you can live 40 years without even knowing about the existence of tipping. So, the next question is, who do you tip? Do you tip the dentist who just removed your tooth? Or what about that very kind police officer who just let you off on that ticket? Somehow you don't tip these people. Why? So I think the main reason why we don't tip these professionals is that we as customers, we recognize that people working in the service industry, some people, they work extremely hard to provide you with that attention, that hospitality that we need for very low pay. And we recognize that sometimes for these people, there's just a very big gap between their effort and their compensation. So, one of the reasons why we decided to tip these people, such as baristas, travel agents, waitresses, waiters, concierges in the hotel, bellboys, is that it stems from this kind of perception. And coupled with the fact that we have this impulse to reward someone for something because we can, and they need it. Let me just share an experience, a personal experience that helped me decide personally to tip or not to tip. A few years ago, I went overseas to travel with a few friends of mine. And we checked into this hotel. And then there was this bellboy who was supposed to take your luggage to your room. And so we gave him a luggage. He proceeded to take the luggage to our rooms. And just when he was about to leave the room, on the spur of the moment, I decided to fish some coins from my pocket and just give it to him spontaneously as a gesture of my goodwill. So I took some coin, I gave it to him, and it was awkward as hell. But it was done. And then I was on a high, because I thought to myself, Ted, you did something good today. But then my friend decided to tell me, hey Ted, do you realize or not, you undertipped the poor bellboy. You gave him too little. He wanted to reject it, but it's too rude. So he had to accept it because he had no choice. And just like that, when my friends mocked me like that, my bubbles burst. And I went from, oh, you did such a good deed today, I'm so proud of yourself, to, I don't want to live anymore. So it all comes down to this, to tip or not to tip. What you can learn from my painful experience is that after all these years, mulling over this question, I finally realized that tipping is not about showing gratitude. Tipping is not about being generous, and it certainly isn't about doing right for your fellow man. Tipping is about making yourself feel good. If you don't feel good about it, why tip? At the end of the day, it feels good. It feels better to be remembered than to be forgotten. If you want to tip, tip big and be remembered as wealthy. Or don't tip at all and be remembered as a cheapskate. At least you're remembered. Because if you tip just fine, you're fine. But nobody remembers you. So when you tip, make yourself happy. At the end of the day, who cares what other people think? Back to you, Toastmaster President.
I never knew tipping was meant to